Moving on now, a retired special constable is preparing to sue the force he served in for 10 years after being arrested over a social media post warning about the rise of anti-Semitism.
Well, 6 officers from Kent Police visited Julian Foulkes' home 2 days after he questioned a pro-Palestine activist on X.
Now, body cam footage shows officers rifling through his collection of books by authors such as Douglas Murray and copies of The Spectator, which officers said were very Brexity things.
Well, Kent Police have now apologised, admitting that the caution was a mistake. And with us in the studio now is the man himself. Julian, thank you so much for joining us. I believe this is your first interview since this has been announced in the news. Just thinking back to when the police arrived at your door,
yes.
What were you thinking? What were your initial thoughts?
Well, I was totally taken by surprise. I was sitting at my computer and I was just booking a holiday, actually, which fortunately I had just completed. And I glanced out the window and I saw a number of police officers heading for my door. So I headed to the door, opened the door, and the officer at the front said, "Are you Julian Foulkes?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "I'm arresting you on suspicion of an offence under the Malicious Communications Act." So I was, at that point, I was actually thinking, what the hell's going on here? It's ridiculous. And it kind of got worse from there, obviously. And she then cautioned me and proceeded to put cuffs on me, which, I found quite astonishing because having spent 10 years working for the police, I was fully aware of the rules and regulations around the use of force. And there was no justification whatsoever for that action. So I was put in cuffs. The rest of the officers all piled in past me. And for the next hour and a half, I sat with one of the officers while his colleagues, the other 5, basically went through every room, every drawer, wardrobe, cupboard in my house. They were in the loft, they were in the garage, they were in the garden shed. So after that, I was put in the car and taken to Medway Police Station.
And Julian, obviously, when you were arrested, you'd have known as a former member of this police force.
Yes.
You shouldn't say anything. You should wait to have a lawyer and have an interview.
Yeah.
But you must have just been outraged. So have police officers who you once would have served in the same uniform as them arresting you over a tweet and then to be rifling through your possessions. How did that feel?
It was probably at that point less outrage. I mean, obviously I was angry, but I was still calm and compliant. But I was just so totally shocked. When you get a situation like that, it's almost surreal. You actually can't believe it's happening. And that was largely how it felt. Particularly as, these were people I'd actually worked with. I mean, one in particular recognised me straight away.
Wow.
So, you're thinking, this is me, what are you doing? And of course, they don't give you any information, any more than I've told you already.
And have you any idea why the police looked at this tweet? So you were essentially warning about the potential consequences of all the anti-Semitism that had been displayed on the streets at the time.
Absolutely.
It had only been viewed, I understand, by 25 views on Twitter, which is absolutely nothing. It was not a particularly noteworthy tweet. Do you know why they chose to pick on that tweet?
No, and it's not something I've actually been able to establish. The pattern of events was that the tweet was passed from the Metropolitan Police to Kent Police. How it came into the hands of the Kent Police, Metropolitan Police, it seems to be a bit of a mystery. And the last answer that we had on that was that they weren't prepared to disclose how they came about it because of security issues.
Sir Keir Starmer says we have free speech in this country. He has consistently defended our laws around speech, around censorship. He's done so in defence of attacks from the American Vice President, J.D. Vance.
Yeah.
Do you think Sir Keir Starmer knows about your case? And if he does, could he possibly still think that we have free speech in Britain?
I'd find it very hard to believe at this stage of events that Keir Starmer is unaware of this case. I actually saw that clip a couple of weeks back, I think it was. I think they were in the Oval Office, and the question came up, and Keir Starmer sat there and said that we've had free speech in the UK for a very long time, and I'm right. You know, I think I know differently.
It's painful to hear that in your position, surely, knowing what you've been through, being handcuffed for a post while the Prime Minister says nothing to see here. There aren't any problems in my country.
It is, because I think it's quite obvious to most people in this country now that the issue of free speech, it's been an issue for a very long time. This isn't something that's just happened overnight. I mean, in my case, it happened in late 2023. But this has been going on a long time before that. I know that Suella Braverman, who was the Home Secretary at the time, had been extremely concerned about it. But unfortunately, the things that she wanted to do and implement, she was prevented from doing.
Yes, and things like the non-crime hate incidents are not actually from primary legislation. They are guidance. So the problem obviously does lie within the police. And what was so notable about that footage we saw was that police officers thought that these books, which were supportive of Brexit and mainstream publications, were somehow a little bit odd, even though 52% of the public voted for Brexit. This is a mainstream position, and yet is that not a mainstream position within the police force?
This shines a light really on wider events, and particularly shines a light on the police and how they view their priorities. They seem to have lost their way, is my opinion. They seem to be concentrating on issues which are perhaps it might be described as woke. They seem very keen on spending a lot of time on DEI issues, but they seem to have lost sight of what they're actually there for and what their core mission is. And it's a big problem. How it gets turned around, I don't know, but I think it's good that it's highlighted and that people understand what is happening out there.
Julian, what makes me nervous is that there'll be so many cases like yours happening essentially without the public knowing about it. I mean, this happened almost 2 years ago now.
Absolutely.
You're only speaking out now after having had support with the Free Speech Union, who've come to your support and guided you through this process as well. Are you nervous about the thought there are many other Julian Foulkeses around Britain enduring this experience?
I am, because it's not an easy matter, when you're dealing with the police. I mean, after I was issued with this illegal caution, I sat on it for 9 months pondering, is it worth me doing anything? I'm retired now, but I was thinking if I wanted to apply for a job, could be issues with DBS checks, that kind of thing, and I was trying to justify in my own mind, that won't affect me, so should I do anything on it? But eventually I got to the point where I thought, no, it's a simple case of right and wrong, so I have to do something. I had to pay money. I thought I might not get that back. I might not get the results I want. So, it was something that I had to do. And
well, and you're doing it for others in your position because hopefully it would make the police think twice.
I am, absolutely. And yes, so I've had to put my head above the parapet, and it's uncomfortable for me. I'm essentially a private person. I don't relish being in the limelight, so to speak, but it's important and people need to know. And yes, I think going back to the point that Charlie made, it has been one of my concerns that a lot of this must be going on. And people in my position that perhaps didn't have any knowledge of policing would think that there was really nothing they could do, to just roll over and accept it. And I think the police have to understand that it's, people are not just going to accept this anymore. It's a major issue.
Right, Julian Foulkes, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you also for standing up.
Thank you.
Well, in a statement, Kent Police have said that they apologised to Mr Foulkes for the distress caused and how the report was investigated. We have expunged the caution from his record and are pleased to facilitate this correction.